What's going on, everyone? We are covering the entire House of the Dragon series in anticipation of the Season 2 release this summer. This is the start of an incredible journey. House of the Dragon has a massive fan base worldwide, over 1 million members in the subreddit, so many content creators covering the show. We're just honored to be a part of this story. And as two guys who haven't read the books, we'll try our best to cover this show and give it the true respect it deserves.
Shut the fuck, shut!
Alright, my bad. Got a little too sentimental there. No time to waste, let's get cooking with episode 1, titled The Heirs of the Dragon. We're going to break this episode down into several key storylines: King Viserys' succession, small council politics, and Rhaenyra and Alicent's friendship.
Welcome aboard. We know from Thrones that the Targaryen family legacy is a bit, shall we say, complicated, so this should be a good old time.
We'll start with King Viserys' succession, since that's the most important storyline in this episode. But before we start, we get a flashback to the year 101 when House Targaryen was at its peak. At this point, House Targaryen has 10 adult dragons under control. Jaehaerys has been ruling for damn near 60 years, but both his sons have died, so his succession is in question, and he's old as shit at this point.
The health of the old king, Jaehaerys, was failing.
King Jaehaerys calls a great council to choose an heir. Harrenhal is fucking packed with 1,000 different lords. 14 succession claims are made, but only 2 make the final cut. Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, who was Jaehaerys' eldest descendant, and her younger cousin, Prince Viserys Targaryen, the king's eldest male descendant. Obviously, being a woman works against her, so the lords vote Viserys in as the heir. We then cut to the intro scene, which is very basic and just shows the Targaryen emblem, but I do really like it.
That first scene goes pretty damn hard and plants a couple of key themes for us. There's a disregard for women in positions of higher power within the house, and it foreshadows some differences within the house that could be its biggest threat to any future success.
Yeah, good points there. And let's give a quick introduction of the characters as well, since it'll be super important as we break down the individual storylines. We obviously first have King Viserys Targaryen, who, as mentioned earlier, was chosen as king by Jaehaerys. Viserys is married to Aemma, and together they have a daughter named Rhaenyra. Viserys consults with a small council, which is comprised of his right-hand man, also known as the Hand of the King, Otto Hightower. We also have Master of Ships, Corlys Velaryon, who's in charge of the naval fleet. He's also the head of House Velaryon, which is the wealthiest family in Westeros. They're a highly respected house, since they have a bloodline that leads back to Old Valyria and is as old as the Targaryens' bloodline. Corlys is also married to Rhaenys, who we had mentioned earlier and was passed up as heir. We also have Lord Lyman Beesbury, who is master of coin and handles the finances of the kingdom. I like this dude, he's really reasonable. Then we got Lord Lionel Strong, master of laws, pretty self-explanatory on what he does. We also got the Grand Maester Melos, who's supposed to be well educated on a bunch of topics ranging from science to medicine and shit like that. Then there's Prince Daemon Targaryen, who's the younger brother of Viserys and is now the commander of the City Watch, which is basically the police force. We also have Alicent Hightower, who's the daughter of Otto and is best friends with Rhaenyra. Alright, we'll obviously have more characters to introduce as we go along, but this is enough background for now.
Lord Lyman Beesbury sounds like a character straight out of a Dickens novel.
More?
That's just a comical name there. Speaking of comical names, Daemon Targaryen, I am actually also Daemon, so, this was a really big boost to the stock for the name of Daemon in general. Viserys seems like a nice guy, but it's very hard to take him seriously. Doesn't really have much of a grasp on what's going on the kingdom or care to make many moves because he's super zeroed in on the birth of his kid.
I would be delighted.
Which is understandable since his son would solve a lot of problems with the succession line, which is tough luck for Rhaenyra. We do see some common ground between Corlys and Daemon across the table.
Thank you for your support, Lord Corlys.
Viserys is still kind of afraid to go at Daemon, which is very interesting because usually where the older brother dynamic, it's the other way around completely. Hightower does not fuck with Daemon, and Daemon does not fuck with Hightower. Seems very mutual. Strong lies somewhere in the middle, and it's hard to get an idea what his aim really is.
Alright, let's get to the main storyline that really drives the plot, King Viserys' succession. At this point, he's been ruling for 9 years, and timeline-wise, it's 172 years before the death of the Mad King Aerys, and 172 years before the birth of his daughter Daenerys. So Viserys has only one child, his daughter Rhaenyra, and as we've just seen from Jaehaerys' succession, the realm is pretty sexist, so a female leader is a no-no so far. Fortunately for Viserys, his wifey, Queen Aemma, is pregnant with what he believes is a son.
They wasted 0 time showing us the dragons.
Finally!
And the scene with Rhaenyra and her mom as she lies on the birthing bed, I don't know. All I know is that I'm glad medical science has advanced, because that thing looks like what they'd have you lay down on in an old school psychiatrist's office while you confess your deepest fears and shit. Anyway, we see that women in this royal line have little autonomy compared to the men. Kind of reminds me of when Mufasa tells Simba he'll rule over Pride Rock one day, only Emma's telling Rhaenyra that one day she too will be knocked up and have no power in terms of input and strategy. Much more depressing. It feels like Rhaenyra wants to be a badass rather than a figurehead, and who could blame her?
Now, Aemma has been through absolute hell to try and get Viserys a male heir. She's lost 5 children in the last 10 years.
I've lost 1 babe in the cradle, had 2 stillbirths and 2 pregnancies ended well before their term. That's 5 in twice as many years.
Just brutal stuff. She's been clear with Viserys that this is the last pregnancy she's going through, since she can't keep mourning over dead children. Plus, it's not like we have advanced medicine in this world, so childbirth is inherently dangerous and only gets worse with age. Anyways, Viserys had a dream that Aemma gave birth to a son, so he goes overboard and has a tournament held to celebrate the birth of his baby boy. Despite the Grand Maester's pleas that they can't guarantee the date that the kid will be born or the kid's gender, Viserys goes ahead with the tournament. I respect Viserys just calling his shot here. It's all about his love of the game. So the tournament draws knights and lords from all over the realm, and the shit gets absolutely rowdy. As soon as the tourney starts, Queen Aemma goes into labor. The knights are all participating in jousting, and this one dude, Criston Cole, takes out both of the Baratheon knights. Cole is an unknown figure at this point, so him going off in this tournament is getting his name out there.
What do you know about this Criston Cole, Sir?
Daemon Targaryen then pulls up and challenges Sir Gawain Hightower of Oldtown, who is Otto Hightower's oldest son. Otto and Daemon have beef, which we'll cover later. Anyways, Daemon nearly gets knocked off his horse, but then comes back and takes out Gawain Hightower's horse. I'm not sure if that's legal, but whatever. Daemon nearly kills the dude and then goes to ask for Alicent's favor. As we mentioned earlier, Alicent is Otto's daughter, so basically Daemon mangles Otto's son and then spits game to his daughter. Ruthless stuff.
Yeah, Daemon is just a real bad guy. Earlier in the episode, he's openly entertaining the idea of taking the throne to the daughter of the king, which is pretty wild. This scene helps build our understanding of the relationship between Rhaenyra and Daemon. This might be some type of bond as 2 people within the Targaryen bloodline that live just outside the circle of true influence. We can see hints of their connection at the joust scene too when he comes up to the royal section. Also, I know my guy Lord Beesbury absolutely placed a parlay or 2 back in the day.
So while this is all going on, Aemma's pregnancy goes off the rails since the baby won't come out. Viserys leaves the tourney to check on Aemma, and the Grand Maester tells Viserys about a new technique that's come out. It involves cutting the womb to free the baby. Aemma would be dead, but perhaps they could save the kid. The other outcome is that they both die. Viserys chooses to save the kid, and we get this fucking brutal scene where they hold Aemma down and cut her stomach open. This shit was tough to watch. House of the Dragon coming in hot right away with brutality. Gotta love it.
I love you.
Meanwhile, back at the tourney, things are getting out of hand. Some of the knights are sore losers and just start fighting to the death. Skulls are getting crushed, faces are getting ripped off. It's barbaric, and we see Rhaenys and Corlys watching. Rhaenys comments that there hasn't been a major war in 70 years, so a lot of these knights are itching for action. Plus, they need to get laid, so this violence breaking out shouldn't be a surprise. I like the symbolism of having the tourney get out of hand just as Emma's getting her stomach cut out. Brutality and savagery on both ends, well done. They do successfully get the baby out, and it's indeed a boy. Viserys names him Balon. Now back to the tourney. Criston Cole and Daemon end up facing off in a joust, and Daemon loses the round. He immediately gets up and challenges Cole to a duel, so now it's Daemon with his sword versus Cole and his mace. The shit is fucking nuts. These dudes are just on site. Daemon actually wins the fight, but is too busy gloating in front of the crowd, and Cole ends up hitting him in the back of the leg and getting the upper hand. Cole asks Daemon to yield, and he reluctantly does. Cole then goes to ask for Rhaenyra's favor, which she gives. We also see that Criston Cole is a pretty handsome Dornish man.
Gods, he's Dornish.
At this point, the rest of the nobles get word of Aemma's death, and everyone is like, yo, what the fuck?
These scenes lean heavily on the idea of death in the air, and overall there are just some bad omens stacked on top of each other. The move on Viserys' part is shady and encapsulates his MO to a T. The guy knows the importance of a male heir and is essentially sentencing his wife to death in order to have a chance at it. She was most likely going to die anyway, but not to clue her in on what was happening was pretty messed up. Tragic scene to watch overall, and then the end of that Daemon Cole fight at the same time was also pretty well done. Daemon taking the loss while celebrating with some straight out of the WWE shit.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
We then learn that Balon died a few hours after, so a funeral is held for both Aemma and Balon. Viserys is absolutely crushed, and Rhaenyra is mad at her dad since his crazy quest for a son ultimately cost her mother's life.
That bit of Valyrian dialogue between Rhaenyra and Daemon related to the throne and that line of succession is pretty fitting, and Rhaenyra stepping up to give the Jaehaerys command symbolizes that she's about to grow up real quick in terms of responsibility. We do continue to see clues that Viserys doesn't handle adversity too well, but he's probably trying to reconcile his quest for his son that Chen mentioned with the fact that the inevitable consequences cost him his wife.
Now, there's no obvious heir for Viserys, so the small council meets again and it's shameless politicking going around. As the king's brother, Daemon would technically have a right to the throne, but everyone in the council is like, dude, Daemon is a psycho, he can't be king.
Daemon Targaryen.
If Daemon were to remain the uncontested heir, it could destabilize the realm.
At first, Corlys supports Daemon since he respects that Daemon isn't a pussy, but then he tries to make the claim for Rhaenys since she almost became the queen herself and she at least has a male heir. Otto actually angles for Rhaenyra to be the heir at first, but most likely as a placeholder. Lord Strong counters that Rhaenyra is a girl. All of this angling pisses Viserys off and he defends Daemon in front of the small council. Meanwhile, Daemon is watching all this shit from behind the walls. I gotta say, I do love these moments when Viserys gets pissed off. It's one of the few times when he really takes charge and feels like a king.
I will not sit here and suffer crows that come to feast on their corpses!
Viserys ends up storming off because the shameless politicking right after he's lost a wife and child simply disgusts him.
The scene reads like a poker game. There's a lot communicated that's unsaid or simply not expanded on, but everybody has a position on what they're pushing. Taking a look around, the more conservative members of the council will do whatever it takes to keep Daemon as far away from that throne as humanly possible. And of course, Daemon is lurking in the background like some kind of weirdo. The "a girl" line from Strong comes across like a bully from an early 90s flick, and we do see that Lord Corlys is a bit too eager here.
There are others who would have a claim.
The chess game behind the scenes continues, and Otto calls Alicent into his quarters. He tells her to go comfort Viserys in his chambers. It's nuts because she's like, what, 15 at this point? So Otto is pimping out his daughter to Viserys. Absolute sicko.
Complete schemer. Man, I really miss your dead mom. Hey, you know what? You should go seduce the king wearing one of her dresses. We have seen Otto Hightower types before. Specifically, the one that comes to mind for most of us is Littlefinger back from Thrones. Jockeying for position, unafraid to pimp out younger women, beady little eyes like a mischievous squirrel. If we know one thing about this character though, not to give any spoilers outright, this is the kind of guy that usually gets what's coming to him in the end.
Alicent does her duty and pulls up to Viserys' chamber with a book while Viserys is working on his clay model of the city. The seed is being planted, no pun intended. Meanwhile, Otto also has spies keep tabs on Daemon, and they catch Daemon basically throwing a sex party at a brothel to celebrate the death of Balon, calling him the heir for the day.
Heir for a day is cold, but let's just rewind for a second to get a load of this guy stopping mid-thrust just to hear Daemon's toast. These men are incredibly dedicated to him.
Otto snitches on Daemon to Viserys, and this causes a rift between the brothers. Viserys calls Daemon in to confront him on what he said, and Daemon admits to all of it. Here's where we see why they have issues. Viserys is mad at Daemon because he's always the one backing up Daemon and speaking up for him in front of the council. He thinks Daemon is taking his support for granted. Daemon, on the other hand, is mad that Viserys keeps trying to send him away. He wants to be Viserys' right hand and protect him, since he believes that Viserys is weak and the council members are all just trying to take advantage of him. Fair point from both lads, but Viserys is king and he orders Daemon to return to Runestone. Oh, we should mention that Daemon actually has a wife, Lady Rhea of the Vale, but he hates her and he never spends any time with her.
I mean, I like him, but he is still a bad guy. Too damn ambitious for his own good, but shit, he's got some instincts on him. This read on Hightower sums it up just about right, and while he lacks the diplomatic tact,
an unwavering and loyal hand.
A cunt!
he has an eye for strategy, skill in battle, and does not lack any ferocity.
So Viserys then calls Rhaenyra into this candlelit super cool dragon worship room, at least that's what I'm calling it, and he tells her that she will be the heir. This news will obviously shake the realm since Rhaenyra is a girl. Viserys tells Rhaenyra that the idea that the Targaryens can control the dragons is an illusion. They're a power that men should have never trifled with. The dragons are what brought old Valyria to its doom, and in order to be leader, she must understand this. Viserys also tells Rhaenyra about a dream that their ancestor, Aegon Targaryen, had. This dream is called the Song of Ice and Fire. In this dream, a great evil winter coming from the north seeks to destroy the world, and the only way to survive is if the realm is united and led by a Targaryen. This is a secret passed on from ruler to heir, and now it's Rhaenyra's secret to carry and protect. Fucking dope speech by Viserys. The heir announcement is made public, and all the major lords of the realm pledge their loyalty to Rhaenyra. We see the Baratheons, the Hightowers, the Starks, and the Valyrians all there.
When we see this through Viserys' eyes, Rhaenyra shows the opposite traits from Daemon throughout this. His warning is one of the more insightful things that he's offered during this episode. Viewing the Targaryen dragons as a sort of Pandora's box is a new take, but I kind of like it. Ambition is not enough, you gotta be cautious, particularly of the Great Winter. Nice work cutting to the Starks' pledge as he says this, and it does close with Rhaenyra looking up a little shaken, but ultimately ready. When you consider all that's been taking place around with her mother, the lack of interest she felt her father had in her as an heir, etc., you can get why.
Alright, now that we've covered the main plot, let's talk a bit about the politics within the small council, since it's going to end up being pretty important. Let's start with the Triarchy. Corlys Velaryon is worried about a rebellion group called the Triarchy. This group has taken over an area called the Stepstones, and they're being led by a man named Kragas Jaehaerys, who goes by the Crab Feeder since he loves feeding his enemies to the crabs. Corlys wants to squash this rebellion since valuable shipping lanes run through that area. The rest of the council seems unbothered by this threat, and this obviously pisses Corlys off.
It's important to pay attention to this because not only did everybody push his concerns to the side, this is already a guy who, due to being wed to the queen that never was, quote unquote, who probably should have sat on the throne instead of Viserys. This guy has already been wronged a time or two. He doesn't seem to love the status quo, and you can definitely tell this through the body language and the commentary he makes throughout the council meetings in the episode.
Daemon is also on the council, and he's currently holding the role as commander of the City Watch. Most of the council members don't like Daemon since they view him as dangerous and impulsive. However, you could tell that Corlys respects Daemon and sort of likes him since he knows that Daemon's a true warrior.
The criminal element should fear the City Watch.
Thank you for your support, Lord Corlys.
Daemon hates the council meetings and skips most of them. He's also hinted to Rhaenyra about having ambitions for the Iron Throne, which we see in the scene when we are first introduced to Daemon. He's sitting on the throne, which is extremely reckless since that could be punishable by death. Say what you want about Daemon, but he's definitely a man of action. One night he has the City Watch go through King's Landing and round up all of the known murderers, thieves, and rapists. Murderers get their heads cut off, thieves lose their hands, and rapists lose their, well, fill in the blanks. This public display is extremely ruthless, and they need a 2-horse cart just to wheel off the bodies and body parts. Outside of Corlys, the rest of the council is outraged at the savage display. Otto especially hates it. Daemon also has a mistress named Massaria, who basically runs the brothels from behind the scenes.
He likes to rule by strength and fear. He thrives in combat. Did we mention he likes to rule with fear? Jesus, these guys are animals.
Let's now briefly touch on Otto Hightower real quick. As we mentioned earlier, he's the hand of the king, and he and Daemon absolutely hate each other. Daemon thinks Otto is a sneak, and Otto thinks Daemon is a brute. Otto works from the shadows though, and we can see in this first episode that he's scheming up a way for his own bloodline to end up taking the Iron Throne. It's why he pimps out his daughter to Viserys.
You might wear one of your mother's dresses.
In this episode, Otto is able to outmaneuver Daemon fairly easily, mainly because Daemon is being an idiot for hosting a sex party to celebrate Balon's death. Viserys ends up setting Daemon away from King's Landing, which lets Otto consolidate power and puppet master Viserys. Speaking of Viserys, as Daemon mentioned earlier, he's got a cut from sitting on the Iron Throne, and that cut is now turning into an infection that seems incurable. This will definitely be a problem moving forward.
Based on Thrones lore, we know that the throne is said to reject the ruler from the throne if they are unworthy. Is this the cause? Possibly. We're in episode 1, so I'll grasp at any possible thread to try and overanalyze. No matter what, the wound can symbolize Viserys as a weak leader who is ailing or ineffective in some way. The trouble within the kingdoms, like the Stepstone drama that hasn't been even addressed remotely. Funny moment when the Maester advises for leeching, and this young gun wisely changes course here. Absolutely zero confidence on his face right there.
Also, I want to cover Lord Beesbury real quick. I just like this dude. He seems extremely reasonable. He's worried about Daemon's impulsivity, which is fair. He's also worried about Viserys spending a fuck ton of money to throw a tournament to honor the birth of a son when the child isn't born yet and nobody knows the gender for sure. I need an advisor like Beesbury in my own life, someone to tell me not to spend $300 on Uber Eats in a weekend. Alright, let's finish up on Rhaenyra and Alicent. Their dynamic is obviously going to be the driving force for this entire show. They're best friends but have very different personalities. Rhaenyra just wants to ride her dragon Cyrax around the world and do fun stuff. Alicent is more worried about responsibility and upholding a certain image. There's this one scene where Rhaenyra is talking to Aemma, and Aemma is reminding Rhaenyra that birthing children is how they'll contribute to society. Rhaenyra is like, fuck that, I'd rather be a warrior instead. There's also this scene in the garden where Rhaenyra is supposed to be studying some important female character in history, but she's bored as fuck. Alicent is worried about it and wants to make sure that Rhaenyra is properly studying.
The story's about Queen Nymeria, who is a warrior queen of Dorne and had much more autonomy and power at this time than the queens in modern-day King's Landing. This gives some foreshadowing that is very relevant to what ends up going down as this episode ends. Rhaenyra is essentially on track to become a similar rarefied figure.
Also, it's perhaps just the privilege Rhaenyra has from being princess, which allows her to be more carefree, but either way, Alicent seems more acutely aware of how politics work. In the same garden scene, she expresses worry that if Rhaenyra does end up having a brother, she'll lose her standing. Her brother would be the heir and inherit everything, and Rhaenyra would lose a shit ton of influence. This thought hasn't crossed Rhaenyra's mind. In fact, at this point, she's rooting for her mom to have a son so that Viserys can finally stop getting her pregnant and making her suffer. Alright, that does it for our episode 1 deep dive. Hope you guys enjoyed it. There was a shit ton of detail in here, and I'm sure we missed a bunch of stuff, so comment on anything else you want to add. Appreciate everyone for watching. We'll be back with episode 2 shortly.